Good evening, I'm Andia, and this is the news of the week. Caricom leaders gather at Brooklyn's Borough Hall for Caricom's New York Conference on the Caribbean Community. Caricom leaders traveled to Brooklyn's Borough Hall last Thursday for a breakfast launch of the two-day summit titled New York Conference on the Caribbean Community. The conference was put together by Congressman Charles Rangel, Harlem Democrat, and dealt with issues such as trade, investment, education, and the diaspora's role in the regional development. Notably absent from the summit was Jamaican Prime Minister Bruce Golding. When asked why the Prime Minister was a no-show at the summit, Jamaican Consul General Genevieve Metzer refused to speak on camera, but instead referred us to the chair of the Council Corps, McChesney Emmanuel.
Well, I can't speak for the Prime Minister of Jamaica. As you know, there is a Consul General here in New York who represents Jamaica. But bear in mind that there's a lot going on in the Caribbean. For example, Dominica, they're having a budget debate. They're also having a diaspora conference in Jamaica at this time. And so my understanding is that Prime Minister Golden tried his best to fit it into his schedule. He was going to come, but then due to all of these different activities, he was not able to make it.
What's Up New York caught up with Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, Patrick Manning. Let's hear what he had to say.
Is this going to be another situation of just words, another big meeting, another big show, and nothing to come at the end of this situation?
Well, it was never designed to be a decision-making forum in the first place. It was designed to, as it were, bridge a gap and forge a nexus between the Caribbean territories and the diaspora here in New York and the United States, and particularly the U.S. Congress. As you know, the world is changing and changing very rapidly. And the countries that are small are in a very vulnerable position as countries become associated with ever-increasing blocks of ever-increasing size. The Caribbean is particularly vulnerable, and we, especially as we are located on the doorstep of the largest economy in the world, it is important for us to have a nexus with the U.S. authorities so we can ensure we're not left behind in the new realities that are emerging in the world.
Guyana's President Bharrat Jagdeo speaks to HDG about the racial conflict in Guyana. Let's go to HDG's one-on-one.
Let's talk about the racial situation. Yes. Explain for someone like me who's a neophyte. I really don't understand what's going on. So explain to us the racial divide in Guyana right now.
This issue of race in Guyana, a lot of it started in the post-independence period. In fact, pre-independence, our approach to the independence. If you were to examine the source documents of the CIA, because now they're becoming public from that period, and the British Secret Service, you will see that they had an objective. They wanted to delay the granting of Guyana independence. So they deliberately fomented problems with the race. So in the early 60s, we had race riots in Guyana. And you have two large ethnic groups, the Indo-Guyanese and the Afro-Guyanese. And unfortunately, there was an active campaign by the British Secret Service and the CIA to divide the country along racial lines with that purpose in mind.
But according to civil rights attorney Colin Moore, the blame for the social unrest in Guyana lies with the two major political parties' incompetence.
It is true that there was a meddling by the CIA in the 1950s, which led to the suspension of the Constitution and a rift between Dr. Jagan, who was the Prime Minister at that time, and Mr. Burnham, who was the leader of the opposition. And there were disturbances in the 1960s. But the present conflict between the races has to do with the incompetence of both political parties. The PPP, the People's Progressive Party, which is the majority party, which is basically an Indo-Guyanese party, and the PNC, which is the minority party, which is Afro-Guyanese party. And both of the leaders of these parties have a great responsibility for the present ethnic conflict in Guyana.
That concludes our local news. And now for more Caribbean news on the national and international scene. Carib ID 2010, the movement to get Caribbean nationals accurately counted by the U.S. Census, officially kicked off in New York this week. The Carib ID 2010 campaign is a movement to ensure Caribbean Americans or West Indians get their own category on the U.S. Census and are accurately counted. It is an initiative of Heartbeat Communications in collaboration with CBNmedia.tv, the Caribbean Immigrant Services, and a growing number of Caribbean media houses and organizations across the United States. Caribbean nationals are urged to register to join the movement at caribid2010.com. Members of the Caribbean American Media Fraternity expressed disgust over the organization of the New York Conference on the Caribbean Community. Several reporters across New York's Caribbean diaspora media told CWN that they were concerned about not being informed about the conference, not being given enough notification about the final details of the conference, and the strict limitations placed on coverage. Very few of the events were open to press coverage, and the private meetings, including the launch on Thursday in Brooklyn, was mainly a photo op event with media told there will be no interviews or interactions between media and dignitaries. For more Caribbean news, log on to CaribWorldNews.com for your daily updates. And that concludes our News of the Week. Up next are Community Calendar and Entertainment News.